How much time do we have left on this?
15 minutes. Do the first.
Yeah.
Good morning. I didn't hear any chimes. Can you hear me?
The chimes played.
Oh, I didn't hear them. Sorry. Good morning. My name is Joan Campbell, and I live in Reading. Come December, I'll have been an official member of UUCD for 5 years. While I'd been looking for some time prior to my joining for a sense of community among critical thinkers to share my Sunday mornings with, I credit 2 UUCD members, Jane Leff and Donna Lawrence, with bringing me on board. We happened to attend weekly music lectures at the Ridgefield Senior Center, and when we got chatting, they just couldn't say enough good things about UU Danbury. So I spent about 8 months checking out the happenings at 24 Clabbered Ridge Road, attending Sunday services, and sitting in on monthly caring circle meetings, which were then held in the cottage. I had pretty much decided that if I ever did join this organization, I would welcome an opportunity to contribute to others beyond my immediate family and friends. My sister in Massachusetts had been, and still is, a UU member, and was active in her own caring community there. So she inspired me, frankly. Old-time caring circle members, Carol Huckabee, Inga Hill, Donna Lawrence, Karen Gelati, and Meredith Spector welcomed me and were such great role models. I soon found it truly rewarding to be there with them for UUCD friends and members going through tough moments and needing some practical TLC from time to time. My experiences with that team sealed the deal for me. I signed the book in large part so I could officially join them. So I will actually begin my 4th year next week, in fact, as chair of this great team that now includes Bob Bollinger and Joan Stapleton, and of course, our newest member, Reverend Kathleen. I should add that I was also recruited along the way to join the membership team, and I've been its secretary for the past 3 years or so. So many beautiful faces and names come to mind as I reflect on my connections with UUCD. I won't name any more, there are just too many to name, but for sure it's been great to meet and work with and learn from so many good people doing so many good things. So now, welcome to the online service of the Unitarian Universalist Congregation of Danbury. I'm so glad you're able to join us this morning, and together in community, we can ensure that social distancing does not mean social disengagement. Our weekly services are more than just a gathering of our physical bodies. It's the forming of a sacred time that we've been making together for over, 199 years now, as we work to build a more just world. And in that sense of sacredness, along with deep respect, we acknowledge that our physical building is on the traditional land of the Paugussett people. For those of you new among us or reconnecting with fonder hearts, we invite you to introduce yourselves and where you're connecting from in that chat box as you are comfortable. After our service, we invite you to stay and participate in a breakout group for individual connections and deeper check-ins. Whether you're well-versed in the technology of teleconferencing or not, we welcome you. Whatever the faith and traditions of your past, whatever your theological stance, whatever your heritage, whoever you are and whomever you love, we welcome you. You can learn more about UUCD on our website and Facebook page. We encourage you to share our Facebook page and reach out to others who may feel isolated and might benefit from the spiritual connection with our loving community. And I do have a couple of announcements for you, which you can also see on your screen regarding next Sunday's service on September 19th. That will be our homecoming service, and it will be online at 10 a.m., where we'll gather with Reverend Kathleen and Sierra Marie and Jerry Phelps, who'll provide the music, and you can read more about that in your order of service. And after that homecoming service, also on Sunday the 19th, newcomers, please join Reverend Kathleen via Zoom for the Sunday Connections. This will be your chance for an informal question opportunity to get some answers to questions you might have about Unitarian Universalism and our congregation. So just look for the link at the chat box, on the chat box near the end of the Sunday service. So again, welcome to the UU Congregation of Danbury, where we welcome all in a spirit of compassion, inquiry, and service. Now please join us for our hymn of welcome.
I'm going to play this hymn through once because I think it is somewhat unfamiliar. And then I understand that we're singing it 3 times.
We gather today, just one day after the 20th anniversary of one of the darkest days in the history of our country, one of the darkest days in many people's lives. But we come together because we know the value of community. We come together to share compassion. We gather today during the days of awe, the holy window between Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. Let us move into this new year with brave humility, turning ever towards love to sweeten life's harshest moments. May we open ourselves to the holy that is within us and among us, allowing ourselves to be guided by all that is sacred as the wheel of the year turns. And may we cradle the call of justice, aligning our hearts with this sacred duty as the seasons change and the world spins on. Deb Casey will lead us in our chalice lighting affirmation and the children's affirmation.
Good morning, everyone. Please gather your chalice, and as Reverend Kathleen lights the chalice in our sanctuary, join me in our affirmation. Love is the spirit of this congregation, and justice is its light. This is our covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek and speak the truth in love, to help one another and celebrate life. I'd like to now invite all of the children. Oh, sorry. My dog wants to join in on our children's affirmation this morning. If all the children could come forward, and we will do our children's affirmation. Let's hold our UUs high in the air. We are Unitarian Universalists. We are people with open minds, loving hearts, and helping hands. We care for the world and each other.
This morning I share with you a story that is probably familiar, although I wonder if the words might sound slightly different. Prinderella and the Synths. Taunts upon a whime, there was a gritty little pearl named Prinderella. She lived with her micked wepstother and her two sisty uglers. Now, Prinderella was very unhappy because she had to flub the scores, wean the clindos, and pine the shots and shans. One day, the Ping issued a proclamation that stated all the eligible earls in the Pingdom were to attend a ball. It was to be a Drancy Fest ball. The two sisty uglers were very happy because they had Drancy Fesses. But Prinderella was more unhappy than ever because she didn't have a Drancy Fest. All she had was a rurdy dag. So she cat down and scried. But who should suddenly appear but her merry fodgother, who said, Prinderella, why do you weep? Because I want to go to the ball, but all I have to wear is a rurdy dag. Oh, Prinderella, you shall go. And in the idling of a twink, she changed the rurdy dag into a Drancy Fess, a crumpkin into a parridge, and provided 6 white Hansing-dorses. Before Prinderella could go, she said, remember, you must be home by the moke of Stridnight. So Prinderella went, and she pranced all night with the Synths. But all of a sudden, it was the moke of Stridnight, and Prinderella was in a panic. She fled down the Stalus Peps, and on the Stodum Pep she slopped her dripper. She slopped her dripper. Now, wasn't that a shirty dame? The next day, the Ping issued another proclamation. It's a proclamation that stated all the eligible earls in the Pingdom were to sly on the tripper, but it fitted it. So Prinderella said, please, may I sly on the tripper? And it fitted it. You know the rest of the story. Prinderella and the Synths were married that very dame say, and they lived happy liever etter. Sometimes we struggle to find the right words, to share our story. Sometimes we are misunderstood. But when we speak from a place of love, and when we listen with an open heart, we find a way to be together in understanding the stories that we share with one another. We share our stories and all that we are by sharing our milestones, a sacred time in our service each and every week, where we bring our full selves. And I invite you at this time to consider what you are carrying with you today. What are you bearing? And if you would like to drop a stone in a small bowl of water, or if you would like to light another candle wherever you are to symbolize that which you bring to us, I invite you to do that at this time. As we see in the chat box, you can type those milestones in. We can see and be with one another as we hear the beautiful music. I light one additional candle for all of the milestones brought here today, and yet held in our hearts to be shared at another time. And before we enter our moment of silence together, I would share with you a reading by Philip Gulley, a Quaker pastor who has filled several books with his musings on life and faith. In this piece from his book, Porch Talk, he reflects on the local hardware store and its owner, a man named Charlie. I never visit Charlie unless I have sufficient time to sit on the bench back by the cash register, drink a Coke, view the latest pictures of his granddaughter, and talk about pocket knives. Men wander in and out of the store, mostly men, some adding to the coffers, others not, seeking Charlie's counsel on a plumbing or electrical matter. I have met some hardware store owners who lack diplomacy, who blab stories of home maintenance mishaps all over town. Charlie is the pick of discretion, as tight-lipped as a priest after confession. Once, while I was there, a man returned 3 times in the span of an hour. A tragic figure, cursed by a home repair project that had gone south. "What's his problem?" I asked Charlie after he'd left. Charlie pretended that he didn't hear me. He deftly changed the subject. My admiration for him soared. I cannot separate Charlie from his store. One without the other would seem incomplete, like a nut without a bolt. It's their sum that is crucial. The hardware store is the community shrine, and Charlie, its high priest, with all of its sacred duties, counselor, comforter, confessor, and friend. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of home maintenance, I fear no evil, for Charlie is with me. His advice and unflappability, they comfort me. But I wonder how many people could live like Charlie. How many of us could go for 24 hours without saying any unkind words about or to anybody? Because think about it. If you can't go 24 hours without liquor or a smoke, well, we'd probably agree there's a problem. So what keeps us from realizing our addiction to the negative use of words? I want to be like Charlie. Reflect on Charlie. Reflect on the days of awe. Reflect on the harsh moments that we relived yesterday. Reflect on what has been shared in the chat box, the milestones in our community, the milestones in your own life, as we take a moment of silence. Let us lift our voices and sing together our hymn of reflection, Spirit of Life.
Love with
is now time for us to give our financial support to this community. If you are a guest with us for the first time, we're just so happy that you're here with us this morning. We invite you to pass the virtual plate, and we hope that you will join us again. Members and friends, please express your generosity by clicking the link that will be posted in the chat. You may also mail a check to UUCD at 24 Clapboard Ridge Road in Danbury. This unusual time has eliminated some of our past income and also has added additional costs, so your contributions are greatly appreciated. Thank you for doing your part to support and sustain this community we love. And now please join me in our congregational response. In the spirit of compassion and service, we dedicate these, our offerings.
In 1835, a poem by Beth Day entitled "Three Gates of Gold" reads, "If you are tempted to reveal a tale to you someone has told about another, make it pass before you speak through 3 gates of gold, 3 narrow gates. First, is it true? Then, is it useful? And then, is it needful and kind? And if to reach your lips at last, it passes through these gateways 3, then you may tell the tale, nor fear what the result of speech may be." When we think about what we say and how we say it, there is a very simple test for guiding our speech. Is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? And some people like to use the word useful or helpful instead of necessary. But I really like adding a 4th question, the most difficult question of all. It's a question that was asserted by Sai Baba, an Indian guru who died in 1918. But he was known for blending many traditional Muslim and Hindu and Sufi elements together in his teachings. And the 4th question would be, Does it improve upon the silence? Whoa. Before speaking, is it kind? Is it true? Is it necessary? Does it improve upon the silence? Just take a moment to think about what it would be like if you asked yourself those 4 questions before you spoke. Maybe all of those questions were in the mind of Charlie, that hardware store priest in Philip Gulley's story. Charlie doesn't answer Gulley's request to know what another man's problem is. He just changes the subject. And Gulley immediately feels more respect for Charlie. I like that story because it reminds me of my granddad, Bud White. Bud White lived in Pink, Oklahoma, a tiny little town that didn't have the hardware store but had the old-fashioned gas station. And all the people, mostly men, would come in and sit around and they'd drink a Coke out of the glass bottle. And in Oklahoma, they'd even put peanuts inside the Coke bottle before they'd drink it. But the story reminds me of my granddad, a simple man from a simple place. They had a party line at my grandparents' house. And of course, if you know anything about a party line on the telephone, that means you only get to make a call when there's nobody else on the line because you're sharing that line. And I would get frustrated. I wanted to call my friends, but somebody right next door was always on the line. And my granddad would just tell me, wait, they've got something to say. You wait your turn. I wanted to pick the phone up and listen and hear what was going on, what was so important. But my granddad and my grandmother, wait, they have something to say. Gossip. They wouldn't go for the listening in that so many others would on the party line. And gossip was a word I would hear from my grandmother, but it's something I don't hear much today, that particular word. And we probably all know how malicious gossip can be. But the word gossip was not always a negative word. It was not negative. The word comes from the early English God sib, a God sibling, like a godparent. It was a member of your religious community. You were kindred in God. And so the original meaning of the word gossip literally was speech within your church. Now, my grandparents never met a Buddhist. They probably could not have told you a single thing about Buddhism. But when it comes to right speech, they practiced it without even knowing it. The Buddha was unequivocal about the importance of how we employ our human capacity for speech and verbal interaction. Right speech. It's also called wise speech or virtuous speech. It's one of the 5 precepts in Buddhism for ethical conduct, as well as one of the components of the Noble Eightfold Path to Enlightenment. But here, that word right, when we say right speech, it's not a moral judgment. It's not to be contrasted with bad or wrong. It means leading to happiness for oneself and others. In Buddhist countries, even the smallest of children are taught this precept. They practice the precept of right speech. Now, I've been told by many colleagues and friends who practice Buddhism that right speech is the most difficult practice for them. Right speech, if we explain it in the negative, means avoiding harmful speech. 4 kinds. You'll recognize all of them. Lies. Words spoken with the intent of misrepresenting the truth. We're faced with lies every single day. Facebook, the news, the media, everywhere around us. Words spoken with the intent of misrepresenting the truth. Harsh speech, spoken with the intent of hurting someone's feelings. Harsh speech is often rooted in a lack of awareness or unchecked anger or hurt. Because when we are aware of our speech, we can then choose to hold back angry words until we can convey the same point without hurting someone. Divisive speech. Oh boy, haven't we been bombarded with divisive speech? Spoken with the intent of creating rifts between people. And the last one, idle chatter. Spoken with no purposeful intent at all. I think that last one follows the question, does it improve upon the silence? Idle speech is meaningless speech. We just use it to fill in those gaps because we're afraid of the silence. There's no purpose to the idle chat. Meaningful speech comes from our deepest parts of who we are. It connects us to people. It connects us to the world. Unfortunately, I don't think many politicians from any and all political parties know much about right speech. Avoiding lies, avoiding harsh speech, avoiding divisive speech, and idle chatter. In Buddhist terms, harmful speech is any speech that's harsh or dividing. And it isn't just what we say in person. It includes what we say in our emails. It includes what we say on Facebook, the memes we copy. It includes what is said on Twitter. And I will confess to you right now that with all of the frustrations and the disappointment and even anger around the pandemic, masks, social distancing, vaccines, I have engaged in some harsh speech. I have. I've certainly engaged in speech that was not helpful. Right speech means speaking in ways that are trustworthy, harmonious, and worth taking to heart. When you make a practice, and it's a practice, we will never perfect it, but when we make a practice of right speech, our words become a gift. And in response, people will start listening more to what we say. They will be more likely to respond in kind, but it's difficult. It's difficult to practice this precept of right speech, and it's primarily difficult because we are unaware. We are on to the next thing, or we are hanging on to what has already happened. We are not aware and in the moment. And so we just say whatever pops into our heads at any moment, and the famous phrase, oh, she doesn't have a filter. Open mouth, insert foot. I've done it too many times. We all know someone, if not ourselves. We know them personally, we know them politically. Who does that? I mean, how many times have you pulled a Biden in your life? Right speech is what's called a mindfulness practice. Mindfulness, where it makes it possible to recognize what we are about to say before we say it. It is possible. It offers us freedom. It offers us the freedom to choose when to speak, to choose what to say and how to say it. With mindfulness, we see the heart is really the ground from which our speech grows. And the practice isn't just for Buddhists. We would all benefit greatly from that challenging practice. And it's a real challenge in this world today. It's a real challenge to try and make everything you say mindful. It's one of the reasons why the Buddha didn't say very much. Maybe that's a lesson. Maybe we can stop here and we could just go to the closing hymn and call it a day. But there is a bit more to the lesson. The first principle to right speech is that our words be true. There's a story of Mullah Nasruddin, the old man, wise man and fool, kind of a strange character. He puts up his booth, sort of like the Lucy character in the Charles Schulz Peanuts cartoon. He puts up a booth that says psychological counseling, 2 questions, or something like that. But instead of 5 cents that Lucy used to have, it's 5 old dinars. And it's really a lot of money. And people think, wow, this guy must be really, really good to charge so much money for just 2 questions. So one person gets the courage and the money and goes up to Nasruddin and takes out his 5 old dinars and puts them on the counter. But he says, you know, isn't that an awful lot to charge for just 2 questions? Nasruddin looks back and says, yes, it is. And what is your second question? So the first principle is that our words must be true. The second principle is that our words be kind or helpful, because we all know it is possible to say what's true and not have it be helpful at all. You've heard the term brutal honesty. Brutal. What kind of description is that? Brutal honesty. Language is powerful. Powerful. Never doubt the power of language, spoken or written. Because with language, we can either hurt or we can heal. It's important that our speech be not only true, but that it be in some way compassionate or kind or useful to someone. And I can't help but think of the example of the small town Iowa preacher whose new car just broke down after the Sunday service. And come Monday morning, the Reverend managed to drive to the vehicle's one town garage, just one in the entire town, small town. Everybody knows everything. And he said, you know, I hope you're going to go easy on the cost, because after all, you know, I'm just a poor preacher. I know, said the mechanic. I heard you preach yesterday. So between Nasruddin and the mechanic, we can laugh at ourselves and we can laugh. And maybe that might have been useful, but that second principle is that our words be kind or helpful. But I don't think that the Buddha was suggesting we be in any way disingenuous. Wasn't calling for us to just speak kindly and not be genuine. He simply wanted that harming and healing potential of our speech to be understood. And the teaching about right speech assumes imperfection. Imperfection, because it's through our mistakes that we discover how our communication can impact our relationships. Our society is built on communication. And when it's truthful or it's genuine, it builds trust. It builds harmony. It's tough. It's tough when we live in an argument culture where there's an increasing glorification of aggression in public discourse. Who can yell the loudest? Who can be the harshest? It seems everything in the media is focused on contention and debate. And I know Unitarian Universalists have a reputation for loving a good debate, but we don't have to debate everything. In debate, reason can be misused in order to defeat the other person. Literally, just look at the origin of the word debate. DE is to the utmost, and BAT is beat. So debate in today's world is seldom civil and decent because it's a way of proving we're right instead of finding out what is right. And yet we desperately need in our families, in our congregations, in the larger world, more dialogue, and less debate. Dialogue, an instructive, constructive way of discovering new ways of seeing. Because in a dialogue, you need to accept that sometimes you're wrong and the other person may be right. So both sides have a chance to grow, have a chance to change. I mentioned earlier that we are in the 10 days of awe in the Jewish calendar. Begins the first day, on the first day of Rosh Hashanah, and it ends with breaking of the fast as the conclusion of Yom Kippur. This is a time set aside each year in order to examine your own heart. A time of deep reflection on your own personal spiritual journey, searching and trying to find ways to improve, to be a better human being. I think practicing right speech is a way in which we can improve. It is a way in which we can become a better people, seeking to understand instead of arguing, even when someone has a political view you vehemently disagree with. Holding our tongue instead of name calling, even when someone cuts us off on the highway. And choosing to listen instead of dominating the conversation or talking over each other, even when we have the very best idea or story ever. Buddhism teaches that our words lead to our actions. And so if we choose arguments, if we choose name calling, if we choose incessant chatter, as good as it might feel in the moment, the resulting actions may not reflect who we truly are, who we are striving to be. But if we choose the words that we speak carefully, we will choose the actions that we do carefully. As Gandhi said, we must be the change we wish to see in the world, and it all starts with our words. Words that create peace, establish justice, and spread joy. Practicing right speech starts with recognizing the power of communication on all aspects of our lives. As members of this congregation, as members of the wider community, what we say to and about each other matters. What we say about those who do not want to wear a mask, what we say about those who support a different political party, it matters. We won't always succeed in only sharing kind and true and necessary words with each other. We are imperfect. We will make mistakes. It is a practice. But sharing kind and true and necessary words, we can live by that. We can strive to achieve. We can practice right speech. We won't always be the Charlie in the story, but we can try. After all, we are members of one another, kindred with all that we need. Perhaps we can also more consciously create the conditions for right listening. Because without the capacity to listen deeply, all the right speech practice in the world is of little use. So today, in the days to come, I challenge you, as I challenge myself each and every day, to practice right speech, to let the words of all our mouths be a benediction and a blessing to everyone we encounter, today and in all the days, and may it be so.
As we extinguish our chalices and as Reverend Kathleen extinguishes the chalice in our sanctuary, please share with me our declaration. We extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and out into the world until we are together again. Now, please join us in our closing hymn, Love Will Guide Us. Cheryl, I think you are muted. I know you're playing beautifully.
Now may the love of truth guide us, the warmth of love hold us, and the spirit of peace bless us as we speak with love this day and in the days to come. Shalom. Salam. Amen. Blessed be to each and to all. Namaste.